Hey everyone, it's pixelademanagement here. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. I hope you all are having an amazing day. I want to talk more on the brand new Loco announcement, as well as give you guys some new information and clarification as well on what we can expect with this DLC. I also do want to talk more about the pricing. You know, I try to keep things neutral on this channel. I like to look at the pros, I like to look at the cons. I'm not on here to just complain 24/7. I'm sorry if it might seem like that, but I think that price concerns over DLC are very much valid. I am all here for Locos being more detailed, having more functionality, and I understand that with that, there is going to be a higher price tag, but I think that the price jump is just a little too high. Executive producer for Train Sim World at Dovetail Games seems to have left a response to a player in one of the Facebook groups for Train Sim World. If you want them as detailed as this, it's gotta cost more. This team spent several times longer on this than a normal train would get, not to mention the level of complexity that's modeled, plus there is the cab car at the same level too. He even writes that personally I think it's too cheap for what's been done, but there you go. I really can't wait to see this thing in action later today. He's definitely really hyping it up here. I think that there's definitely a lot more than they're explaining in the article. We're gonna see all the details later today, and I'll likely get back to you with my thoughts, and of course if I think it is worth picking up right away at full price. So there was supposed to be a preview stream yesterday, which unfortunately got canceled. They did announce that there was supposed to be a surprise guest as well. They're unfortunately no longer going to be on the rescheduled date, which is now coming today, but there was some clarification over on the forums for one of the developers of the BR101 Expert DLC. So a little more detail here and clarification for some misunderstandings since the announcement article was released on Dovetail's website. So the shorter summary all in all is that you can drive the intercity cab car in the timetable on 2 routes and the BR101 Expert on 5 routes. I don't really remember if that was mentioned at all in the article. I definitely think that should have been better clarified. And CWF Green also writes that randomly occurring faults are enabled by default in expert mode in timetable services and in free roam. I really like that. So these things are going to be occurring pretty much at all times in any scenario that you're playing. Number 1, the fault simulation is automatically enabled in timetable mode and free roam as long as expert mode is enabled. You can disable it whenever you want. You can also enable the fault simulation in normal mode, but it will be disabled by default there. By fault simulation, I mean randomly occurring faults. That's not to say that the scenarios might not have faults occur as well. Wink face. So I guess kind of getting confirmation here that if you're playing the actual scenarios, the new ones that are coming with the Loco, you will likely receive those faults there too, which honestly, I'm looking forward to seeing. There is a chaos factor setting that at the default value simulates realistic probabilities of faults occurring, and different faults have different probabilities, but it can be increased quite a bit if you want an interesting drive. Wow, so there's actually going to be a setting for chaos factor? You know, this just only feeds into my speculation of random events and delays. I hate to talk about this yet once again. I feel like I'm just gonna sound like a broken record at this point, but I would just really love to see these types of settings applied to new routes as a whole. I can already envision like a chaos factor setting for any given timetable for literally any service that you're running. The higher you have it, the higher chance that you see maybe signal malfunctions, malfunctions that hopefully eventually clear and fix so that you can finish the services that you start, or even potentially, delays with AI traffic. I think the chances of seeing something like that with Train Sim World 5 are definitely on the lower side. I feel like something like that, if it were to come, probably wouldn't happen for a couple more years. We already have signal issues in game that actually aren't supposed to be there. So until we get those fixed, I think we should definitely wait on actually putting in planned signal malfunctions. But just the idea of that sounds so cool. I think this Loco is definitely going to open some new doors for Train Sim World in the future. Number 2, the fault simulation is available on both the BR101 Expert and the Intercity Cab Car. Number 3, safety systems are disabled by default in normal mode, which is honestly what I'd expect. That's kind of the default now with all of the other locomotives that we have in the game, even though they don't have an expert mode. So I wouldn't expect them to change how that operates in normal mode, but they're going to be enabled by default in expert mode. They can be isolated or re-enabled. This process is more complicated in the Intercity Expert vehicles than the other TSW locomotives. However, just keep that in mind. So I'm assuming we're going to see more on that in the preview stream later today, which I'm very excited for. Number 4, there will be a manual. There have been a lot of concerns. How hard will this be? Is it a steep learning curve? I'm pretty sure it was mentioned in the article that we'd see a manual, but in case you had doubts or you didn't read the article, there will be one. So whether the learning curve is steep or not, which we do not know, the manual will make that learning process a little easier at the least. Number 5, the Intercity Cab Car is drivable in 2 timetables. That's Naviker Dresden and Bahnstreck. It makes me a little happier that the BR101 Expert itself will be available on more timetables than the cab car at least. It definitely makes it more worth it for that price, but I still feel like it's just a tad bit too high. However, at the day of launch, the BR101 Expert locomotive substitutes on 3 additional routes. That's Bahnstreck, Bremen-Oldenburg, the Rother Ramp, Dresden to Chemnitz, and of course, Castle Wurzburg. I tried my best with the pronunciations, I apologize. The 3 remaining routes were the original BR101 layers, did not have substitution enabled on the BR101. I can't promise if/when this will be fixed at this time. This is a little surprising, as this is where the original BR101 that we already have in the game runs, so it would be nice to use the updated Expert Loco on those routes. But given that these routes are on the older side, and this is a new Expert Loco with much newer, better tech, honestly, I'm kind of not surprised by that. They also mention Köln-Aachen on here, which, if you have been paying attention to the latest roadmap streams, there is a timetable update that is planned for that, but there was no mention of like a remaster or upgrading its feature set so that it goes by TSW4 standards or potentially even TSW5 standards. At this point, I truly think we're not seeing that until Train Sim World 5. That is, of course, if Train Sim World 5 is even coming at all. I'm pretty sure for a while that timetable update was actually pushed into no date at this time category. I don't know if there are other projects that are taking priority over it, but I just feel like they wouldn't release a timetable update for a Train Sim World 2 route without at least upgrading the route itself, maybe providing a new loco, possibly even extending it. I honestly feel like I'm moving into speculation mode now, but that might be one of Train Sim World 5's launch selling points. It's possible it could be a remaster for TSW5 or maybe even a route extension. And then of course they might announce that this will work on that route, but of course course, only the new version of Aachen, if that even happens. Again, just speculation. I'm trying to think like Dovetail here, like what would they do? I don't think they would just update the timetable and that's it. I think there's a lot more with that, and that's why it's likely been on the roadmap for as long as it has, with no update on a release. Of course, if that is true, I wouldn't expect them to announce anything more than a timetable update so soon, especially if they do plan on doing anything with the route, enhancing it, extending it. If it is planned for a future Train Sim World game, we're gonna have to wait on an announcement for that. But I know a lot of work is going into this new updated timetable, so that can't be all that they're doing with that route. CFW Green continues, the intercity cab car requires a duplicate timetable to be drivable, and this means significantly more work than allowing substitutions of the original BR101 with the BR101 expert, so we had to pick and choose. If an additional timetable was duplicated for the IC cab car to be drivable in the future, which one would you want, smiley face? Well, then that kind of goes back to Aachen then. They're working on a new timetable for it, so I can bet you that there will probably be substitutions in for that, or possibly even new services that utilize that Loco. But I don't expect that until whatever else they announce for the route, because like I mentioned, I don't think the timetable update for that route is all that's coming. If I'm gonna vote myself, I vote Aachen. We're clearly getting a new timetable for it soon, eventually at least. And I love the dynamics of the route. You do get some high-speed runs. I just really hope we get an enhancement for it. I want to see the volumetric clouds, volumetric fog, you know. I really love that route, but it's very outdated. Leave your thoughts below on all of this mentioned today, the new clarifications, and of course, if an additional timetable was duplicated for the intercity cab car to be drivable, which route timetable would you want to see? That's going to be it for me, of course. Thank you so much for clicking and watching and joining me in this discussion today. I'm interested in hearing all of your thoughts below. Take care and happy rail simming, guys.